Hey everybody, welcome. Oops, let me get my camera right here. Welcome to the August 18th Tinderbox meetup. Our format is to go around the room, have new people introduce each other. We have a small group today, so we all know each other. If we have a theme, we jump into that theme. If we don't, we just talk about projects that we're working on and share our thoughts and ideas about personal knowledge management, the tools we're using, and how we're navigating this great world of knowledge. So, with that in mind, again, I don't see anybody new. We don't have any themes today. Has been some interesting discussions on the forum, particularly around interacting and working with Obsidian, so we might want to jump into that. But before we move on, what do you guys want to talk about today? Frederick, you were talking about possibly picking up on the thread that Art from the forum discussed about interacting with Obsidian and pulling in attribute values and using stream parsing. We could certainly dig into that. Paul, you got anything on your mind?
I've been struggling with a function that I'm writing to process the members of a list, and for whatever reason, I'm running into problems with it. So
So
that's
we
kind of a subtopic.
so we pop that one up.
Probably not well organized to talk about it, but I think I can describe it. Um, how do
All
you want to
right.
do that?
Well, if you want to share, if you can share your screen, that's great. If not, we can make
Sure,
up fake data and go through it.
sure. Let me bring that one up. Can you see that?
We can.
All right. So a little bit of background. So I have a journal, big journal Tinderbox file that has a note for every day. And when I get emails incoming, I like to move them into Tinderbox if they're relevant to whatever I'm doing at the time. So I grab those, I either drag them in or I move them in with some Apple script, and then I like to process them. So I have this stamp. And thanks to you, Michael, I think, converted my entire file from having edicts and rules, which take up a lot of cycle time, to having just stamps. And many of them are on visit stamps where if I click on an entry, it runs something, but otherwise I'm not using any process cycles. And that's really been helpful to me. So one of the things I do is when an email comes in, I don't run a lot of things to process it. I just run this stamp called process email, and it does a bunch of things you can see at the top to assign attributes. But where I'm having trouble is when I come down here, this section right here with these if statements, I have a terms attribute that has terms related to the email that I fill those things in, and I don't want to run the code unless there's any terms there. And the same thing with the sender, and the same thing with related people. I have a related people field or attribute where it says who's this email related to. Well, this everything's working except this if related field area here, where I want to say it, and related people is a list, but for some odd reasons, it doesn't. It only shows up in black type. It never shows up in color
Ah,
coded type, recognizing it.
well, okay.
Um,
So that is a regex issue. It's not probably is not an issue with your code. So if you hit Command 1 really quick, and so I think the one issue you're raising is why is my attribute not purple and why is it black?
yeah,
So if you hit Command 1,
I keep hitting Command One. Here it is.
okay, and bring that up so we can see it. All
Can
right.
you
And
see that? Okay.
yeah, click on the 4. No, click on the documents one, the one to the left of it. I'm sorry. Click on users. Now select your attributes. I suspect if you
Um,
go all the way down to the bottom of the list, you're going to see the related people there. So that attribute exists. And so this is something I've run into before and actually ran into it this morning. Um, the way Mark is going about color coding is he's using regex and the lowercase
ah,
name in the
the camel
attribute,
case.
yeah, the camel case, his regex is not capturing that and coloring it purple. So it doesn't
Ah,
mean that it doesn't exist. It just means that it's not being colored purple.
okay. So I shouldn't
That's
shouldn't
just
worry
that's
about
just
that.
an edge case. So if you were to change that to capital R, then it would work. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because that might break something else.
Gotcha. Oh, that's good to know because
Okay.
I've been
Yeah.
futzing over that and
Yeah.
deciding
So
what to
it's
do.
nothing. It has no. The attribute exists, and the way to validate that the attribute exists is you look in your attribute list.
Okay.
It's not being
Good.
colored in the code. So why is it not? What about it is not working?
So if you run through the code here, I might have futzed with it last night and tried different things. I think I tried to turn it into a participants field, and that worked and got color coded. So um, what I did was I looked through the forum. What I want to do is I want to take the list of all the names of people who are in that set, whether it's related people or participants. I may have messed it up. And I want to run this create link contact function for each member of that list. And for whatever reason, it doesn't happen. So I went in the code yesterday or in the forum yesterday, and I saw that Mark Anderson had posted something that uses this values action code and created a list, and that doesn't work.
No, and I wouldn't see how that would work. So so participants is a list or a set?
Participants is a
No, go back and open up the inspector so we can validate it. So click.
participants. That's a system attribute, isn't it?
I don't know.
I think it is.
So that could be your problem. If it's a system attribute, it might be a list or a string. Okay, it's a set.
It is the set. Okay.
So just so people, okay. So participants is a set. So you're trying to turn a set into a list, which doesn't make any sense.
That's my problem.
So I mean, it may or may not be your problem. So what I would do.
So can you pause there? So the difference between a list and a set is a set has all the properties of a list, but it's non-duplicated, right? Or deduped.
It's deduped in alphabetical order.
Okay.
Right. But you don't then. So in other words, you don't need to do that operation. So what you could, and I haven't seen your create contact function.
Right.
Can we look at that real quick, just so I can see what?
Yep. It's right here.
All right.
So this is what happens. I get this list of participants or really items. I run some log code. I just want to go through each one and create a note if it's existing.
Yeah.
And it's not working. And when I look at all the log entries that I populate, it's only getting the first element of that set ever. I can't get it to get more elements of the set. And I'm sorry, I'm not more articulate, but
no, I totally get it. So go back to your other code.
So here we go.
Is there a way to print out the whole set to see that it's there?
Well, I'm trying to do that here. So this code, and granted my list is the wrong thing, but I'm trying to run through a one line each loop that logs all the participants' names, and that way it would check. And this only gets the first name in a list ever.
Yeah, so I don't think you need that preceding code. You just
you don't think you need my list?
You don't need that, and you don't need to delete it. Just comment it out real quick for now, with the 2 forward slashes. And once you comment out the next one too. Right. So you're essentially saying, if related people.count is greater than 0. Okay, now this might be your challenge. Where are you calculating related people?
So I may have.
So so can you go back to a note that has that? Because, for example, is it possible that related people has no value and the value is actually in participants?
Yeah, so let's see. Here's an email. Here's an email that this is focusing on.
So this is my guess. This is your problem. Now go back to your code.
Okay.
All right. So you're testing, is related people.count greater than 0? Well, it's not greater. And my guess is it's not greater than 0 because you've not calculated related people count. So I would say is participants dot count greater than 0.
Yeah,
So
that may have been.
if participant count is greater than 0, then run this script.
Right, and so it just logs that count and then sends that whole thing to this function.
Correct. It's sending it's sending the set of participants to the function, and then it's parsing through. So once you see if it worked.
All right, so I'll get an email. I've got this email. I run a stamp. The stamp says process the email. I go to my log. And so here's the log that goes through, checks everything. It says it's running the function. It only got one item, and it created that note. And it says that the count was 16 items that it received, but it only acts on one. That's where I'm stuck. And it may take more headspace, but if you can see, this is what it logs out. It says that it's running, creates these temporary variables, logs I'm trying to log the entire thing that it's receiving, and maybe that's my problem. Can I actually do that? I received this set of multiple items, an array, and I want to print it out, but I only get the first item.
Right. So can you, just to isolate this a little bit more, can you create a note somewhere else called log?
Create a note called log?
Yeah, if you don't have one on the root somewhere, like right underneath watch folder.
All right, let's see.
Or right under templates. There's somewhere.
Yeah. Hang on a second.
Just create a note called log. I'm assuming you don't have another one on root. And then,
well, I have logs up here.
Yeah, but you don't have log, so that's
right,
fine.
I don't have logs. Okay.
Okay. So
now I do.
Yeah. Okay, and go back to your code. And let's see what's coming in. So right under where you say log, your first line
up here,
hit enter. Hit $text parentheses quote log quote close equals I items. All right, and then run it. So let's see, that should put whatever's getting passed. Gotta find an email with some participants in it.
Yeah, sorry for this. Here we go. So here we go. So I'm going to run the stamp on this one, which has all those participants. Process email.
Okay, and then scroll down and go look at the log real quick. Not logs, log, the one we just created.
Oh, gotcha.
Right, so you're only passing one.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. So your code's actually working. It's only getting that one item. So now we need to see, go back to your.
So why is it only getting one item? If participants has 16 and we've proven that, it's passing participants, but it's only getting the first item.
Why don't you put the log in there too? Go right under where it says log.
I'm confused. Wasn't the problem further up in the same code?
No, I don't think so. Let's just test it right here. Let's test it right here. Go down, create a line break right in front of the comments.
Okay.
Yeah. And hit text log equals participants. Right. Because what we're, the way to debug this is to try to figure out where now go apply that stamp to the to your email. And I have a feeling I know what it is. Maybe let's see.
All right, so.
And then go look at the log. Right. So you're only sending one. Go back to that email. And which one's being sent? Is it actually the last one? Tom something? What was the name that was in the?
No, it was Jeanette, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's the wrong field. It's
Yeah,
the sender.
It's sending this. It's getting the sender instead of participants.
Okay, so there you go. So it's getting the sender instead of the participants. So now, somewhere, what that's telling you is somewhere up in the stream, you are
Sender is nowhere down in this code.
but sender is above.
So I am calling the same code and sending sender. Maybe it's not even, but it is running this code loop because
well, maybe it's not running that code loop because it's not sending the participants to the text log. So
right, it's only sending sender.
Only sending senders. So what's happening is that next block of code is not getting run.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost know nothing about what I'm looking at right now, but it seems to me that that you're collecting something for sender, but you're not actually collecting any data into participants.
Correct.
Yeah. I am closing out this if block though. Sender closes, so. Is it necessary? Does this space after the if block matter?
I don't think so, but you can remove it just to make sure.
What happens if there's an error in code? Does it just stop, or do you get a?
No, yeah, you never get a message.
You never get it. So if there were a fault somewhere, you wouldn't get further.
No.
I have read in Mark Anderson's, the dictionary that it's recommended that you have, if you have an if statement and you start a loop, that you have no space between the test and the opening bracket.
Yeah. By the way, just
that
to help,
matters.
just for coding perspectives too, so you see the last closing bracket in your if statements?
Yeah.
Okay. Move up a couple
here?
lines. At the end of the sender line, right?
Yeah.
Down. Go down.
Oh, here.
Tab in twice, or move your space in twice, just in front of the bracket.
Like here.
Hit enter. So what you want to do is go back to the left. You want to align the opening if with the closing bracket, and so that way your eye can always going be down, so you know whether or not something's open or closed. That's kind of like a best practice in coding.
Yeah. Yeah, I break that sometimes.
So,
all right. So I think what I've learned from this is.
I think. Oh, just a minute. This could be the problem. You are missing a semicolon at the end of your participant's code. So go all the way down to the end of that block.
Okay.
Keep going all the way to the end of the line. Right. You're missing the semicolon right at the end.
At the end here?
Yeah. And then put the line break and then put a semicolon at the end. That could be it. Because it's not completing the transaction.
So do you need a semicolon after a bracket, curly bracket?
Well, you do to close the if, you do, yeah.
Okay. Well, that's the practice that I haven't followed. So that must be just generically something I should know. All right. Let me try it again. Ah, all right. Well, it's gotten a lot farther than it did before.
Go look at our log.
Yeah. Let's see, where am I here?
Okay, you're still only getting sender there. Okay.
All right. Well, you've given me some good ideas about troubleshooting. I tell you, the best thing I've learned is, creating log entries, and then following the flow with log entries and just seeing how things are going.
So what we
been
have
very
identified though, so what's happening is, and it's not necessarily the case that you're only sending project pass to function.
So that's a signal that things are working better, because before it never executed this last
Right,
function call.
because the semicolon was breaking the code.
Right,
So
and now it
in
is.
the project, but
Yeah.
you're still not getting the participants.
So supposing you insert a line between the log sender
Okay.
and the if participants, and in that line you just zero out the contents of sender or of text.
Or actually, let's try this. Take that text log. That's a good chance too. But take the text log equals participants.
Yeah.
Put that above the if statement. Put it right there. So that's going to say the sender thing's going to do its thing, and then we're going to send the participants to the log. And let's see if those because it could be your if.count thing is not working properly.
All right. All right. Let me go back here.
I'll go down log.
And then look at log. I should hoist that so I don't have to do this every time.
Right.
Oh,
okay.
Dang, it worked.
So it's the participant count part that's not working. That code's not triggering.
Yeah. So it's getting, this is working.
Right. So the if participants.count is greater than 0. Why don't
and it is because it logs 16.
Is the paren in the wrong place? I don't understand why there's.
Oh yeah, the parent's in the
What paren?
Yes, it is. Good catch, Frederick. The parentheses is in front of the greater sign. Greater than 0.
Oh.
Move that on the other side of the 0. There you go. Now run it. Good catch, Frederick.
Ah, all right. It worked. It worked. Gosh, I would have never found that. That's maddening. Thank you.
I don't know why it didn't succeed the test, because it wouldn't, with the parens in the wrong place, wouldn't it still return a value from the paren expression that's greater than 0?
No, because that code was failing right at that point.
Oh, I see. Oh, you're right. Right. Okay. A try would have caught this then too, right?
Right. So but see, there's a great example of the debugging of the logging. Rather than freaking out, why is this not working? Just methodically step through. Yeah. What am I sending to the code? What am I sending to the code? And then eventually you'll figure it out.
Yep. Wow, super. Worth it.
All right, you can take out that text log participants.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Sweet. Yeah, very sweet. Thank you.
And there was much rejoicing. All right.
All right, I'll relinquish this.
Do we want to tackle yours a little bit?
Oh, which was mine. Actually, Paul Walters just posted the regex for pulling in parsing that text and at least finding the YAML or whatever content was between the YAML markers.
Well, I had a demo to show you how to do that. I haven't looked at.
Go for it. Go for it.
So
Yeah, I'd be interested in knowing whether it makes sense to do the stream thing that was mentioned or whether the reg checks. I'm not sure how you decide what to do.
well, they're not mutually exclusive. They're both. So let's do a demo on that, and we'll talk about that. So I ran into it. I woke up this morning thinking about you, Art, and I put together a little bit of a demo before the call. And then I ran into an issue, which is I'll be needing to post in the backstage. But I think in terms of the spirit of debugging, this helps us understand, understand how I came across the error that I had. But maybe we can figure this out together. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And here we go. All right, we've got a blank Tinderbox file and a bunch of other crap on my computer. Okay, so let's say you have a blank Tinderbox file like this, and Arts and many others, our desire is to, much like what I'm doing right now, I'm taking notes in debug, parsing, email. Okay, so I'm taking notes in I'll spell later. In my Obsidian file, I'm adding like who's attending the meeting. So I kind of keep this streaming set of notes along the side. So I personally love capturing and using Obsidian as like my first pass collection app because it's just faster. And it's on my phone, it's on my watch, it's on my tablet, it's kind of everywhere. So what do I do? So the first thing I do if I want to get that information into Tinderbox is I go over here and let me get this out of the way. Sorry, this shouldn't be there. I go over here and I go to, come on. Got to get some stuff off the screen here. There we go. So I go over to Tinderbox and I grab the watch folder right here and I say watch from Finder. Okay, so then that pops up a Finder window and I scroll down to my Obsidian vaults and I just do a watch onto my Obsidian vaults. So now I've got my Obsidian vault sitting in my folder, and if I do an outline, that's my Obsidian vault, and I can go here and find some meetings, right? And you'll see here that this is the YAML file that Obsidian puts in front of a note. So I'm just going to copy that now.
Mike, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So this is safe, right? It's read only, so Obsidian won't get messed up by doing this. The watch
Correct.
just lets you see what's in that directory and copy, basically, or
Yes, that's correct. And you'll see here, these are all the Obsidian prototypes. And if I view as
Properties.
right, this is the YAML file that Obsidian puts on top of a note when you add a prototype. And if you want to add a new prototype, I don't remember what the
you mean template, right?
No, they call it prototype.
You're talking about properties. They're called properties.
You're talking about properties. And
Yeah.
So if I go ahead and I hit Command semicolon, I can create a new property like test, and then I can give it what type of what type do I want to give it, and text list, etc. And so now I've got a new property in Obsidian. So what I can do is that shows you how to get notes into Obsidian. So for the sake of testing now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that properties box, and we'll call this one called raw note. Okay, and so now I've got a set of properties from an Obsidian file in my Tinderbox test file called raw note. And so now what our desire is to parse the elements in between the YAML tags, and the YAML tags are defined by these hyperlinks here, in our not hyperlinks, these dashes into their requisite attributes. And I got super close in getting this completed this morning, and then I got stuck. And I got stuck because the code's not, Tinderbox is not functioning as I would expect. So I'll have a post I'll send to Mr. Anderson or Mr. Bernstein before the day is out. So what is our goal? Our goal is to look at everything in front of a name and a colon is what we want to call, what Obsidian is calling a property, and what we're calling in Tinderbox an attribute. And so what we want is the value of any property, aka attribute, to be populated into Tinderbox. And so here's an example of, here is a Obsidian property called type, and the value submitted in type is meeting. Here's a property called project, and the value submitted in and this one is actually a set or a list. So there's two different values that I would want to have ending up in the Tinderbox attribute values. So we agree with that's kind of the objective?
And Michael,
Are
those
these-
two are, oh, go ahead.
No, sorry, I was going to probably ask the same question. Are you setting those up as backlinks?
I was going to say those are links to other notes. So you're going to import them as link. You're going to report the names, and then you're going to have to go and link to notes with those names after you're done, I'm assuming.
I could.
It auto links. It auto links.
Yeah, well, it auto links in
Obsidian.
This in Obsidian, this is how you do auto linking. If you want to do you go like this and you say new person, and by doing that, that creates a link. And if I click on that note, that creates a new note called new person. So that's how you do linking in Obsidian. So what the two brackets here are showing is that it's a new link. And what Tinderbox is doing when it is bringing in the let me show you that note. Okay, and what Obsidian is doing is, in its source file, like right here, it's actually putting quotes around those brackets, probably because it's escaping the regex. Because brackets are regex, it's turned regex items. But so eventually we'll clean that up. But the point being is we want to get these values into Tinderbox attributes. So do we agree with that?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So let's methodically step through how we might want to go about doing that. And I'll give you my thought process as I was doing it this morning. So the first thing is, when I'm playing with a point like this, I'll just create a new note called note. And I'm going to always keep my raw note pure, because invariably I'm going to completely screw it up and have to, and accidentally erase my original code. So there's a couple other things that we need to do. So one other thing I would often do is this, and this is where it gets kind of fun when you're using other tools. So let me go get this. Now I could have done it manually, but I got super lazy this morning because I wanted to do it quick, and I pulled up ChatGPT and I took this and I said, give me regex to capture everything between okay, and then
You're joking. That's so funny.
right. Come on.
I tried that and I got a very bizarre regex with back
Yeah.
things, and it didn't work.
Yeah, let me for some reason it's not letting me get to the top. Give me the regex to capture everything between in there. Okay, so it goes out and it processing the regex, And so that's one way to do it. And it's so what this regex is saying is I'm going to go find the first three literals. I'm going to capture everything in between them. And I am going to do it. Now, what's interesting is I got this morning when I was testing, I got a separate regex that seemed to be a little bit more solid. You know, it's matching any white spaces. It's making sure that we're capturing everything in between the hyphens. But you're essentially it's essentially the same regex. It's just two different ChatGPT sessions gave me two different types of regex. So that is one way. So essentially, we've asked Chat to help us write the regex to say, how do we capture the information between those YAML tags? So let's go ahead and I'm going to use the regex that I got before because I know it works. And
Sorry,
so
Michael, what's that app you're using? Is it a browser or is it actually a ChatGPT?
that's a ChatGPT's Mac OS app.
Okay, got it.
Okay. So what we're going to do, and the reason why I do that is I'm going to say, call this get raw note. And I'm going to say, make the text note equal to text dot extract that regex. Okay, so I'm essentially saying, hey, Tinderbox, go make the text of the current note I am having make the text of raw note. Okay, go grab the text, make my text equal to the text of raw note. Oh no, shit, sorry. Should be this. Right. So make my text equal to the text of raw note dot extract this. And so if we apply the stamp, you'll see that my text has now become the text of raw note sans the YAML headers because I don't need them anymore. So I do that just because I never have to touch raw note. And that way, if I accidentally erase this text as I'm going through the operations, I can always recopy in the raw note and start back over.
Yeah, it's good logic. You could even probably set up I'm just wondering if you could set up a stamp that would create a new node. No, but you're not doing it from
well,
the source.
You could. I mean, yeah. But it's just quicker for me to do that. I just create, because this
Yeah.
my test environment where I'm doing my code. Now, what we want to do is let's think about our pattern. See, and the great thing about this use case is the properties value in coming out of Obsidian has a very specific, concrete, always used pattern, right? So strings are the name of the property, colon, space, and then the value in the string. Lists are the type, colon, a line break, then a dash space, and then an item in the list. So essentially now what we want to be going through is parsing out we want to be going out and be parsing out the code. So I'm going to copy this here. And I'm going to place this here so I don't have to keep going back and forth. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to walk ourselves through developing a stream parsing capability. So let's get OBS values. Okay. So the first thing we want to do is we want to tell it, we want to use what's called the each line. And let me pull up ATB ref so we can all see that. And by the way, for those that don't know about it, ATB ref is your friend. All right. So Mr. Anderson has been dutifully developing ATB ref for us for years. So if you look at that and you do a find each line.
Michael, quick question.
Yeah.
So you are using one way to create a stamp, And the alternative way is just to create a stamped note, but they're equivalent, right?
Correct. And I'll show you that in a minute. So if you see, this is the string.each line. This is the operator we're going to be using, string.each line. And I'll drop that in my Obsidian notes for later.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
The watch thing does it have to be a local vault or can it be one of these Obsidian remote vaults?
What needs to watch folders are locally on your hard drive. I also think you can do watches from a URL too.
Okay.
So I think the answer is it can be from somewhere else. But
All right, thanks. Sorry, I just
but I think, Fred, like ultimately it's whatever's on your hard drive is actually what Tinderbox is having the easiest time grabbing, right?
Right. If it's on your hard
and
drive,
that's why, yeah. That's why when Bernstein, when Eastgate had come up with this, and then he in fact added an app called Tot. You can also grab from either Apple Notes app Note or from this app called Tot, which works across your iOS.
What's the app called? I missed that.
Tot, T-O-T. I'll put it on the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so Paul Kriske had a question about stamps. So he saw me open up the inspector and creating stamps, and you're not seeing any stamps in here. If I actually go to the file menu and add in the hints folder, then you'll see that Tinderbox has the stamps, and there are the stamps right there. So if you have the hints file open, you can be creating stamps right in this note here. Otherwise, I actually produce most of my stamps from the from using the inspector. But yeah, you're right, though, Paul. It can be in either way. Do it from the inspector or the specific note. Okay, so now what we're wanting to do is we're now going to want to start parsing this out, and as I said, we're going to want to use the each line parser, and the syntax of each line is the name of the string, and the loop variable is conditions and the actions that you want to take. So let's go ahead and start drafting our parser. And so what we'll do is we'll say text, because what we're doing is we're parsing text, and we're going to use the each line parser. So text.each line, and notice the case, it's a capital L, right? And you're going to say, well, what am I parsing? Well, you need to give it a variable. This variable can be anything I need. I want it to be like a line. And then I'm going to, so that is the syntax of creating an A-line process. Take the text, each line in the text, pass that line to a variable we're going to call A-line, and then perform some action on that variable on that line. That's essentially what that context or structure is doing. So the next thing we want to do, though, is what's the first action that we want to do in this line? Well, we need to know, in my opinion, the first action we want to do, and this is where the logic can come into play, is we want to check if the line is an attribute or not. Okay, so the first action we want to do is check if the line is an attribute or not. Is this an attribute? Is this an attribute? Is this an attribute? Is this an attribute? No. Right? This is an attribute, yes. This is an attribute, yes. This is an attribute, yes. This is not. This is a value I want to be have in the attribute. Do you guys see the distinction? Because
it's also a different line, right? For some,
it's a different
because
line,
it's a list,
and it's preceded by a different character. So I know that ID colon, the value after ID colon is an attribute, and the value and the string after that colon is the value I want to get for that value. Here, type colon is my attribute, but its values are actually on a separate line, and they're separated by the hyphen, or they're designated by the hyphen. So that's one of the things that I need to think about as I'm doing this. So let's go ahead and say, what I now want to do is I want to check if and using what we've learned from Paul just in Christy in the previous discussion, let's create a note. Logging is your friend. So we'll create a note called log. And this is why doing this kind of stuff in smaller test files makes it easier, as opposed to like Paul's file where it had all of these notes all over the place, scrolling up and down and moving around can get kind of confusing. So sometimes when you have a little problem like this, create a test file like what we're doing here so you can have everything close. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say text log. And for this particular test, what do we want to log? We want to log a line. Okay,
You need
so
a dollar or no?
what?
You need a dollar sign or not?
No, because the value, the variable, we've converted that into a variable called a line. So each line, so as Tinderbox goes through the thing, it's gonna take the line it's currently reading, drop it into a variable called a line, and then process it and then move to the next one.
Okay.
So invariably, what am I expecting that this is going to be doing? Since I'm not doing a plus equals, it's going to give me a new line, give me a new line. It's going to process each line. So intuitively, when I hit apply on this, my expectation is that what's going to get logged is the word introduction, because that's the last line in the list. And
Fair
so,
point. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, absolutely.
So if I hit apply note, there we go, introduction, right? Because if I did plus equals and did that, I would just reproduce everything and I would get all of the individual lines. And if I wanted those individual lines separated, I could do plus equals by a line break. And I do this. And now we've just essentially and then okay, now we've reconfigured the line. Now now we're starting to get a jumbled mess. So then that says, okay, well, what's the next thing I need to do? Well, when I'm doing testing, I want my log, the very first thing when I run this stamp, I want to clear my log, right? Then I want to rerun it. So now if I do it, I've just basically repurposed the whole original note because I've rewritten each line into the item. And if I wanted to have fun with it, I could say something like, yeah, we could put a counter if we wanted to, and I don't want to make it up now because we don't have time. But I could say line 1, line 2. So let me pause there. Does that make sense for everyone?
Yeah, I was going to ask you a question more on syntax. Which when you use the dot each line operator, what you're basically doing is capturing multiple variables on a line by line basis. Is that how it's?
No, I'm not catching multiple variables. I'm capturing each line, and a line is designated by the line break or the paragraph break.
Yeah, but what does the app do? Does it actually capture the content of each line as a line, and then
so this is the first line. It
Yeah.
processes it, and then it says, okay, now that I'm done with this line, go to the next line. Now that I'm done with this line, go to the next line. Now that I'm done with this line, go to the next line. So it's literally just stepping through each line individually, processing it with whatever action you're telling it to do, and then moving forward. Okay, so by doing
Okay, so it's looping essentially. Then
it's
just going to do the line and go back. Okay, fine.
It's a loop, right? So by doing that, I've now said, okay, now I know my each line function is working properly. And again, it helps to have the little 3-dot indent or 3-space indent so you can actually read what's going on. So now I know that log is done. So we can go ahead and comment out that log. So now what we want to do is we've got our first condition is, and this is the actual. Okay, so now we have the first condition we want to test. Is this line, or the other thing is, does this line contain an attribute name or not? Does it contain an OBS property name or not? So what do we do with that? Well, we need to do a condition. If a line, okay, dot I contains. So what I'm saying is, if a line, the variable that we're looking at, a line contains something, then I want you to do, and again, when you're writing code, sometimes it's helpful to like block out the syntax first so you can get it right. Right? So I'm essentially, if a line contains something, then I want you to do something else. So that's the condition of that syntax. And we'll define what we want it to do in just a minute. But let's put our log back here, because what we're going to want to do this is we're going to ultimately want to log something else in just a minute. So I'll stick that in here. And we're going to undo it. And now we're going to get back into a little bit more regex. Okay, so what do we want a line to do? What we want is a line to grab everything from the beginning of the line up to the colon. And the way to go about doing that is this regex. Sorry. And that regex is this. All right. And so what that regex is doing, and I'm presumably we could probably do a from beginning line.
Why do you have the question mark? I've been wondering about that because point star matches anything and the colon matches the colon. So I'm not sure why you need the question mark in
The
there.
question mark says be greedy. Go get me everything.
Oh, I thought point star would do that anyway.
What?
I thought the point star would do that anyway.
Yeah, there's something in there. I don't know I'm not a, so sometimes when you are, I'm not a regex expert, but the question mark like forces it to be greedy.
Okay, thank you.
So you're essentially saying, go get me everything up to the colon is what you're saying. And by putting it in the dollar and by putting it in the parentheses here, you guys see that? What that's doing is creating what's called I think it's called a back reference in regex. I don't remember. And essentially what it's doing is it's parking whatever's in those parentheses into a reference called $1. And if you don't understand that, this is a really killer app. So there's an app called BB Edit, which is awesome. And I use these apps hand in hand. So let's say I go grab this. I'm going to paste this code in here. And then BB Edit under the file menu, you go file, new, pattern playground. And BB Edit has a tool called the pattern playground. And then if I go back here and I grab my regex, here and paste that there. All right, you'll see. So this is the way I can test my regex before, and so I can see what Tinderbox is seeing. So if I'm doing this regex, now watch, if I remove these parentheses, okay, what regex is seeing is start at the beginning of the line, grab everything and be super greedy about it. Give me everything. And so it's saying, okay, I'm going to go get you ID. And I'm only giving you up to the colon. And here I'm giving you prototype, and here I'm giving you type. So you can see that regex is matching that for me. And then if I go back in and I type in the parentheses, you'll see that it's created this capture group called 1. And so capture group 0 is $0. Capture group 1 is $1. And so it's captured that information for me. So if I go back to Tinderbox and I say here, aline.I contains this regex, and those parentheses created a capture group for me. So what do I want to log now? I just want to make sure that whatever is being captured in $1 is what I expect to get out. So when I do this, my expectation is going to be I'm going to get the word ID. And so if I hit apply, go to my log, and I didn't get the word ID. I cleared out my text long capture. Let's see. No. Let me go to my other one that I know works and see what I did wrong. Maybe it's this. Okay, let me go to the one that I know that works. If paste this in. If a-line.I contains, because I didn't get, why is it not working? And why is that not getting cleared? Text log, let's clear it. Oh,
Did you do the right thing?
It is working.
It is working. It
It
did
is
the last,
working. It's giving me introduction.
yeah, without the call.
That's crazy. All right. So here's the other thing I do sometimes too. For now, I just want to focus on the one item. So I'm going to delete the rest because I know my log items there. And so I'm just going to focus on ID. So now if I do it, I'm just going to get ID. Right. So that's funny. It was working. I just didn't see it. Okay. So I've captured, I now know I'm back referencing, I'm getting the capture group that I want. So now what do I want to do with ID? Well, here's where I need to start creating a Boolean for myself. So, and where certain new variables need to come into play. So if you think about the conditioning of what we're doing is saying, if this, because there's a distinction between the raw nodes. If this, because I want to do something different. If this is a prototype, do this. Or if it's an attribute, or not prototype, if it's a property or an attribute, do this. If it's not, like this one meeting, I need you to do something different. So if we go back here, I'm going to say, if your a-line.contains, then do that. And then now I'm going to say, I'm going to create a variable for myself, and I'm going to call that variable Boolean. Boolean is Attri equals false. So I'm going to create an attribute. I'm going to create a Boolean called is Attri. And in this context, because I know there was a colon there, I can now say is Attri equals true. Right. So I'm now telling Tinderbox that this line is actually has its property is an attribute. And so given that I now know that's true, I'm going to make v Attri to equal to $1. And I need to define that new variable called v Attri. And v Attri for me stands for attribute. Okay. So we're essentially saying now, is this an attribute? Yes, it is. Now, so since it's an attribute, make its the v Attri value $1. Now, what we want to be doing is starting to capture this information from the stream parsing. So now what we're going to say is if v Attri equals ID,
Is that a double equals or a single equals?
should be a double equals. Thank you. Then, well, what do I want you to do if attribute equals VID? Now, I'm going to make some assumptions while I'm doing this demo. Is I will have pre-configured into my Tinderbox file attributes, right? Because this makes the development of the coding easier. Later down the road, I can create, as Art was suggesting, and as we just demonstrated with Paul, create functions. So if the attribute doesn't exist, then create it and then populate it. But for now, let's just hard code the things that we can have in our control. So if v Attri equals ID, what do I want you to do? Well, what I want you to do is grab all of the text following the colon. So how do we do that? What we do is we say IID equals a line dot following, because following is another attribute. and it's going to be following,
Hmm.
or another operator, I should say, following colon space colon. There. So what I want you to do,
A-line should have a capital L, correct?
it should. All right. So what I want you to do is, if your Attri is ID, make the ID. And here, Paul, here's the see how that ID is not getting highlighted because it's lowercase. So same thing as you were experiencing before. AID A line equals dot following. Grab everything following that on this line and stick it into the ID value. So when we hit apply, there you go. ID value's not gotten everything left in the line. So now let's think about, well, what else do we have going on in here? So let's grab a couple more. So because now we know that one works. And another one that's like that is start date. We'll deal with type in just a minute. All right. So then we can take these two, create two more versions of that. And we can say if AID equals prototype, AID equals start date, and then you say, okay, and this, I'm going to show you something too that just caught me for a while. It took me like maybe 15 minutes to figure out. Start date. Okay, and let's add these babies up here. Okay, so now we hit apply. Okay, we got the start date, but we didn't get the prototype. Why? And it took me, God, at least 15 minutes. And then it dawned on me, Tinderbox will not let you assign a prototype value if that prototype doesn't exist.
Doesn't exist, right? Makes sense.
Okay, so now if we go back to, so we've added the prototypes in, we've created that prototype called P meeting. So now, and for fun, just to show that it works, let's go here and we'll give it a calendar icon. Now we go, there you go.
So that's
now,
interesting. You defined the prototype in Obsidian. You gave it a property with the prototype. That's interesting.
Yeah, so what I did that by design, because you now notice this note has now taken on the prototype of P meeting.
Sorry, Michael, one question about this, the V Attri equal $1. Essentially $1 is just the
It's another variable. It's a placeholder. It's
prior
a
variable. Okay. If it contains whatever you're saying it contains, that now becomes $1.
Right.
Okay,
right.
fine,
So for example,
fine.
if I go up here and I put parentheses around that, you see this has now become $2 because I've got two caption groups. Set of parentheses here and now a set of parentheses there.
Interesting. Okay.
So my regex creates what's called capture groups, and then you can use the values of those capture groups for future operations.
So you could have, well, no, the reject would fail if you had a $2 after the colon and a friend group after the colon, because then if there was nothing there, or it might fail. And
no, it wouldn't fail. It would just give me nothing because there's no value in it.
So you could do that instead of the following, but this is cleaner.
Right. Yeah, and it's cleaner because I'm now using pure Tinderbox. Regex has the chance. Regex can get squirrely, and so I'd rather use Tinderbox operators where possible. So essentially, I've now populated. I'm now, if we go back to the Tinderbox, I'm now populating those attributes with these values. Okay, all is right in the world, right? And again, we can automate the crap out of this going forward. We can have it create the attributes for us. We can have it create prototypes. There's all of these other things we can have it do, and we know Tinderbox can do that. So for now, when we're learning the basic structure, let's hard code what we can for controls and deal with the other things later. So now what we've done is we've said, we now can populate the values of our of our main properties that are strings. The next thing is, how do we start then dealing with list types? So let me show you this. So if your line is a property, then set the is Attri to true. But this line being prefaced by a hyphen doesn't have a colon, so therefore by definition in our syntax it's not a property. Right? So we can stick an else statement in here. Right? And in this case, I don't necessarily know if this is necessary, but I'm going to do it just for my own logic. We can now say the attribute is in fact now false. Right? Because this line is actually not a prototype line. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I don't understand what meeting is. It's not a single value. You could have a type that's multiple types for a type. Is that what?
No, this is a list.
Basically, what you're doing in properties, you can define in Obsidian, you can define a property as a number, string, or a list. It's got about 4 or 5 types.
And so for me, in Obsidian, yeah, type is just going to be meeting. But in my Tinderbox, I know that my type attribute is a set that has many things in it.
So that's why you did it this way.
Some things are calls, some things are, there are many, many different types in this world.
So in Obsidian, you anticipated what you're going to do in Tinderbox by making a list. Okay, I got it.
Although I would argue, I mean, if Obsidian doesn't need to know, for example, if you just typed in the word meeting in Obsidian and once we imported it in Tinderbox, Tinderbox would already have the attribute set up for type, and it would know it to be a list.
I could have done that too, but I didn't because here's the thing. In my Obsidian, sometimes the type isn't just a meeting. Sometimes the type may have 3 or 4 different values.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So
I understood that. Yeah.
I just gave myself that flexibility. Right. So now what we want to do is we want to start parsing out our types. So if we now know that this line, because remember, we're interrogating a line. So now we know that this line is not an attribute. Excuse me, this line is not a prototype, it's not an attribute. So therefore we must do something different. So what are we going to do? Okay. Well, if is Attri, I got to spell it right.
Michael, your screen seems to have gone below where I can read, by the way, and thank you. And I was also going to point out, like for shits and giggles, you might want to move the log text now to that point, so you'll actually be able to capture in your log the lines that are not attributes.
Sure.
Now, don't you need to be able to look back to see which attribute it was, the v attribute from before?
No, because we're still in the same loop. Okay.
Oh, you're right.
It's still evaluating each line, right? So yeah.
We're still in the same line. So now what we're going to say is Attri equals false?
Huh?
Then I want you to do something.
But you just set it to false. I'm confused.
I set it to false, but I'm now doing some other conditional logic.
I don't understand.
Yeah, I think Fred's asking, do you need both those lines? Because one is you're already now in a space where it's if
right. I
probably
don't need both those lines, but I did it for my own self so that I could have maybe possibly some other operations, because we know it's false. But maybe I wanted some other operations when I was playing with my logic. And then to your point, just so we can process it. Go back here. We can process that log. Right? So, and you're right, Fred. I probably don't need this Boolean logic here, but I had put it in anyway, so that's fine. Let me do this real quick. I got to double check something. This is good. This is what I want. Yeah, here. Okay. my screen went full 49-inch expansion. Okay, so now what we want to do is if you are not, so let's just make sure that we are getting the attribute value that we expect. So here, let's go ahead and add in a meeting, maybe a project too. All right. So if I run this, I'm going to expect to get the word project, which I got nothing. Let's see. Oh, I know what's happening here. And so then at the end, I'm trying to do and I'll show you now where I'll watch this. V Attri equals $sign plus V Attri. So now what I'm trying to do is produce a value called V Attri, adding the $sign so that I can now start populating the attribute called V Attri. And this should work. Why didn't that work here? So if I apply that, why am I clearing out the log here? Just a minute, something's not right.
You need a plus equals, no, I'm sorry, it's a log, never mind.
Plus equals if V equals false. If equals. Right, well, I just know this works.
I think it just could be the placement of where it is, because you've opened a parenthesis there, and probably it's
No,
pulling the content.
I think you're not setting it in the else. You've set it in the if, but not in the else, so it's not getting the value.
You just do this.
You're parsing it in the if it's a colon, but if it's not a colon, you're not setting it. So the last line is not a attribute. That
Oh, I know. Okay, I know what was happening. I hadn't set the Boolean. So I got the Boolean equals false. I've got V Attri. I don't need this. Clearing my text log. So if I hit that, yeah, okay. So now I'm getting the $sign project, right? Which is what we'd expect because this is now project. The last item in the list is project. So now I'm getting blah, blah, blah. I'm creating, I'm populating those attributes. I now know that this is in fact false. I now know I'm getting the attribute value called project. And now we're going to get to the one line that'll
Can you explain why you need the V Attri equals dollar plus V Attri when V Attri was just set before?
I can explain why I'm doing it, but then I can show you why now my code, what I'm trying to accomplish now breaks. So then now watch this. I come back here because here's the next line. What we want to be doing is saying this. If you say if a line dot I contains then that
Huh?
I then want you to capture everything else. Okay.
Okay.
Right. And then and this is not going to work. I'm going to show you what I was trying to do, and it's not going to work. And I need to call get Mark Anderson to help here, or Mark Bernstein to help here. But what I want is eval a Attri plus equals $1.
You have to do an eval instead of a dollar.
Right, because this is the way it should. This is the way it should work, but it's not, because what we're doing is we're telling Tinderbox to evaluate the string dollar, say project, as a Tinderbox action, so that it will treat it as an attribute name. And then what I want it to do is populate it with the value $1. The issue is this doesn't work.
Oh, I see. It's a double, yeah.
Yeah, because for whatever reason, it's not populating that. So let me show you what will and this will be either a feature request, bug fix request, I don't know, to Mr. Bernstein. I'm going to make this a set. So we've got a thing called project. So if I apply this now and I hit apply, nothing happens. But if I go in and hard code, because we know Attri is based on our processes that Attri is $project. So we know that this should be it is a valid prototype name, or excuse me, attribute name. If we were to hard code $project there, and go like that, we get the values, right? So we know our code's working because it in fact is parsing the information out of here. What's not working though is our ability to pass to Tinderbox a attribute name to be validated, to be evaluated. And I know this works in another context. And another context, I can show you the other context here. When I was doing a get attribute test. This is the test I did for the other context. No. All right, let me show you the other context where we know it works. Where we know it works is like in this context here, where I've shown you all this before, but I got to find the right file here.
So I see. So if you prepend $1 and do a name, it's not going to be recognized by Tinderbox as a Tinderbox attribute unless you eval it.
Unless you eval it, correct. And I know that this works in another context because if you look at my create notes, if I eval an Attri name as a .each loop, it works. But if I eval an Attri name in the context to which we're doing here, and if I do it here in this context, it does not work. So my guess is we just got to go to Mark Bernstein and say, hey, can you make this work? Because it works. The eval of an Attri in other contexts works. It's not working in this context. So I suspect this might be the first time anybody's ever tried to do this. Or there is a whole other reason why it doesn't work. But I don't have any idea why it wouldn't work because it works in other contexts. Right. So I suspect there's something in the Tinderbox code that Mark needs to go in and tweak for this use case for the eval to work. And then if it does, then we're freaking golden. Then this script can be used to parse any Obsidian stream. But as it is now, it will parse any Obsidian property that is a string. We're just running into this issue of properly evaluating properties that are non-string based properties. Now, a few other things to think about. There's a bunch of garbage in here. So one thing we might want to do is say $1.replace quotes with nothing. I don't know if this is going to work.
Replace is misspelled there.
Anyway. Yeah, I noticed that. Replace. And since these are reserved, we got to escape them.
And I guess you'd have to take a second pass to make the links. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. All right, I think this will work. Come on, come on, let's go. Taking the dog for a walk. All right, so if we do that, and we're gonna, and for now we're gonna hard code it to project because we're just testing until Mark. I don't want to say fix because that means something's broken. I don't know if it is or not. Okay, let's delete this. Okay, that doesn't work. So we'll remove that. Huh. It was working a second ago. What did we do? What did I break? There we go. So now it's working again. So I think here what we want to do is we want to say, we can clean up a line here, I think. We say, come on. A line. Perfect. Right. There you go. And so that operation here cleans out all of those all of the brackets and the quotes.
I'm confused. You have 2 dots in there and I don't understand what
Where do I have 2 dots?
A line dot replace.
Oh, it's just Tinderbox is
Forgiving.
forgiving. Yeah. Hang on. That's funny. There you go. Yeah. So that cleans that up. So now we've got all of these beautiful, lovely notes. Now let's add another thing while we're having fun with this. We say project.each x create x. And now we've just created all the project files.
Huh.
Right. So essentially you're just breaking down the operations into its little steps. And obviously, and you can use all that create stuff we've done in weeks past to add prototypes and pass other values and do other cool things with this. So I think we're nearly there. We've just got to ask Mark how we can have this, instead of this being hard coded with a variable name, how we can have this be eval the Attri. Once we get that, we have everything we want. Okay. And the nice thing about this, hopefully, just methodically stepping through it, methodically dropping the values that you're producing into a log file. Oh, I see what Tinderbox is seeing. I see what's happening. I see what I need to clean up. I see what characters I need to escape. Is the kind of way to go about doing this. So what do you think, All? Was this helpful?
Oh, it's awesome. The question
Yeah,
came up,
most definitely.
the question came from the chat. Is the ID from Obsidian? And I think it is, right?
Yeah. So in Obsidian, there is an Obsidian, Obsidian has a bunch of plugins, and I don't remember the name of it now, but there's an ID, there's a plugin called, I think, Note ID. And if you add the plugin Note ID, this plugin generates a random ID number for every Obsidian note, which I wanted to have because this is going to be the way that I can link any notes I bring in from Obsidian into Tinderbox back to Obsidian, because I can go into Obsidian and search on that ID number and find the original note back in Obsidian.
I just put up in the chat as well. Like there's a system attribute in Tinderbox called UUID, which when I'm looking at it, it kind of shows up on creation as a blank. I don't think that Tinderbox is assigning, but Tinderbox does have a unique ID attribute as well for each note.
Right. So for me, this is Obsidian ID. Right.
Yeah, and you're sharing it across so you can find it.
And the reason why I haven't called it OBS ID, I guess I could, but the reason why I didn't call it OBS ID was because it's just the ID number that the Obsidian plugin gave me. And I haven't gotten around to messing with changing it.
So I guess if you ran this script more than once, at some point you'd have to check whether you've already imported a node and not do it again. And you'd have to track the IDs in a dictionary or something.
If you wanted to.
You could, yeah, you could do that in the sense. It's a good point. You could have a check to see whether that UID exists already.
Exists somewhere, and if it does, then don't bring it back in. Yeah,
you could have been modified. It could have been modified since then, though, too. So I don't know.
And that's the other thing. You don't know what the Obsidian decides tomorrow. They're going to change from a 64-bit ID system to a 128 ID system.
Well, remember, this ID system is not Obsidian. This ID Obsidian is an Obsidian community member who built a plugin that's generating a random code for each node.
Oh, so Obsidian doesn't assign UIDs automatically for each node?
No.
Okay, but Drafts does.
Yeah,
which you can export with your,
it might. I don't know. I shouldn't say no. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems.
Yeah. The only way I could figure it out is to find this plugin that this guy created.
That's a good catch, though. It's useful.
Because I don't think it does. And actually, no, I don't think Obsidian does, because remember, an Obsidian node is nothing more than a path to a markdown file.
Right.
So Obsidian doesn't actually need an ID because it has its path.
So I should start using that plugin.
Yeah, it's really nice. I'll find it.
What's the unique ID attribute, Michael, in Tinderbox? What's it called?
It's just ID. It's just ID.
The system attribute?
Yeah.
Oh. No, what I'm asking is, Tinderbox does assign a unique ID to each node, right, on creation?
Yeah, called ID.
And that's what it is. Oh, that's the one. Okay, got it. Okay, now, you use uppercase and lowercase. That's what I was confused just now when you were saying it's ID.
No, Obsidian used lowercase. Tinderbox.
Yeah. But Tinderbox using uppercase. Got it.
Now, by the way, here's something that I think would be interesting for you all, or it could be, and as we wrap this up, when we talk about IDs. So for example, that, and I mentioned this before, that I'm writing a textbook with my partner Mary Beth, and one of the things that we realized was, is this the right one? Yeah. Okay. One of the things we realized was a couple things when we're inserting notes into, when we're doing like an include into a note. And my process for doing an include is I copy this. Let's say I go down here and I'm going to create a new note called page, and I'm going to assign it my page prototype. So when let's say I wanted to include that in this particular note, this image in a file, I hit copy, I go to page, I hit / include big, and my text expander automatically copies the image number, whatever I had on the clipboard into this. And so now I can render and it shows me the image. So that's how I'm inserting images into the book that I'm writing using this methodology. The issue I had was, if we use the note name, like the caption, we originally were using the caption NFC circuit mockup as the include. So if the note name was fig-NFC circuit mockup, and then I did the include fig-NFC circuit mockup, if I ever changed the name of the note, my includes would break. So I needed to have a unique ID that would make the make it so I can insert it, change the caption, change the naming of that image without ever having a fear of my include breaking. So I originally started with the idea, let's just use the ID number, which worked great until we started collaborating with a partner. Because what I ended up happening was this. Watch this. If I have a note, and I call this one figure, and we're gonna create a stamp. I'm just gonna mock up the example so you can see the challenge I ran into. We'll say name equals big hyphen plus ID. Okay, so if I apply this to this note, I've got name equals fig hyphen ID. So now if I get a new file, and I brought that over and I copied this. Oh, and actually what we don't want it as a stamp. Let's do it as a edict because I was trying to automate this functionality. So this is the problem we ran into. So this node's happily running along. Its node ID is its name is the node ID. I then copy that into a new file, aka the Tinderbox file my partner is working on, and do that. And then lo and behold, as soon as it runs, that node ID becomes different because the node, it will become different in a minute. Just a minute, what's here? The 5, 6. That's funny how it's not changing. Oh, there, no, yeah, it did change. Okay. So you notice, so here is my problem. When I have an edict running in the background that's making the name of the node ID, here it's 5, 6. When I copy that image into her Tinderbox file, the node ID now changes to 5, 9. So I couldn't use that include method using note ID because I was breaking my includes. So the answer we came up with was here, and using the on visit functions we talked about earlier. I have code there that essentially goes in and says, grab the file name, create a new attribute called ID figure, populate it. So if ID figure equals nothing, then make ID figure equal to F to the node ID. And then make the name equal to fig hyphen ID figure. So that way I now have a new ID number that is unique, non-changeable, that I can now copy and paste back and forth between different Tinderbox files. And I've solved that problem. So I can now have my notes automatically being named with the ID number that I've contrived, and now can copy and paste between different files, and that ID will always be consistent. So that's another little trick.
Useful.
Has come up with the stuff. Yeah. All right. Well, we're about 4 minutes over. Art, I almost got you there. Just that one.
No, that was great.
We have to ask.
No, actually, I really appreciate it, and also because this is a lot more elegant than my sort of Cloji method of pulling the data in, and also sets a good baseline for lists, which I haven't really been using in Obsidian, but I think that your approach, and obviously put a lot of time and thought into it. So really appreciate opening this venue, which I'll take further.
Yeah, absolutely. And then run with it. And then hopefully Mark can solve this this eval Attri capability in this context. If it can, then I think we're golden, and we'll just move it forward. And the nice thing about this is people ask me this all the time. Why are you spending so much time in this? Isn't it so much effort? Well, and it's effort, yes. But one, I'm learning. Two, I'm learning I'm not only learning code, I'm also learning logic. Two, I'm learning, like methodologies of computing. But more importantly, I'm making a little bit effort now to make life in the future like forever easier. Right.
So it's really interesting that you brought this up, because oddly enough, I was having this very discussion yesterday with somebody, and we were talking basically. I'm going to just sort of go outside Tinderbox a tiny bit, if you have the indulgence, with the concept of software packages that are all pre-baked, that you're presented with all these forms and There's very little to be done from the point of view of the user. You're forced to work along the very narrow channels that the software developer has assigned to you, as opposed to something like Tinderbox, where you have the facility to use a bit of scripting, a bit of coding, and to twist and tweak and turn the way the application processes data to your needs. And clearly that's the first thing that comes out is like, well, okay, that takes time, and there's a learning curve. But the learning curve comes with its own benefits because yes, you're learning logic, you're learning programming, you're learning all these other things that help obviously build neural pathways in your brain, which are invaluable in their own way.
Yeah, and if you don't mind bearing with me, let me just kind of show you something else too. So in working with my co-author, she also had this challenger request, which was really cool. So if you go in here, let's say we've got this note here, this brand new note, and she's like, we've defined terms before in a previous incarnation of our book. And I'm just going to pull up a Word file here real quick, right? So let's say this is, chapter 3 in the Word file of the book. And if you scroll all the way down, you'll see here that we've got a bunch of terminology that, words that we've already defined before. So let's go ahead and grab these. And because it's got a pattern, we can do something about it. So if I go here, I'm going to grab all these terms. Now watch this. This is really cool. If I go here, you could be manually,
I know what you're going to do. Okay,
be manually tweaking these things if you want, but I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to call glossary. I'm going to paste that in there. So now I've got all my terms. So now I'm just going to go quickly explode them on the line breaks. So now I have all of my terms in an exploded list. And so now watch this. So now I go variable list, v list. And then I say v list equals name.split at the colon. And then I say name equals vlist dot at 0, because that's the first item in the list. And I say text equals vlist dot at 1, because that's the second item in the list. I do it on the first one just to make sure it works. Okay, so now I've got above the fold equals that. I now know it works. I scroll all the way down. I go like this, apply it to them all. And now I have my perfectly organized glossary of terms with all of its terminology separated into each individual word. I then can go up here and say, oh, you know what? What I forgot to do is I say name equals name dot capitalize. Bang, it's now capitalized. Scroll back up. Do them all. And now we've got our glossary of terms.
That's great.
Right?
That's so fantastic and fast. By the way, on the split, can you do multiple splits? Like, can you have split 0, 1, 2, 3? Okay, so everything that's before or after, or if you have say multiple colons,
you cascade the splits if there's a pattern.
Fine. And it ignores the spaces.
It can if you want it to. No, it's up to you. You tell.
So, but when you did the split now, didn't you have a space?
No, I just split at the colon. But you can split at colon space. You can split it any.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
No, I was just curious about whether and what you did that, because like a lot of apps now, for example, Apple Numbers, if you're editing a cell and if there's a trailing space, it will truncate the space.
Well, yeah, no, Tinderbox won't, because Tinderbox doesn't know what you want to do with that space.
And it's faithful to your data. Correct.
You can tell it. Then you use .trim to trim that space.
I accept that. Yeah, no, good point. Okay, I'm gonna, if we have a moment, I'm just gonna ask one thing,
I
Michael.
actually have to get running. I've got to, I'm
Okay,
late. For
then no
But-
problem.
But yeah, well, guys, thank you very much. Hopefully you enjoyed today, and we will see you next week.
That was great.
Thanks so
you.
much. It was a great
Thank
demo.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.